Well, good morning. I want to welcome you again to Tuesday of our Holy Week daily devotional videos. Hopefully, you were able to see yesterday's devotional video as we were in Luke chapter 19 from verses 41 through 48. And I'm not going to read all of Luke chapter 20 today, but we are going to read verses 1 through 8. And hopefully, you've already read Luke chapter 20 as well as Psalms chapters 110 as a part of our Holy Week reading guide. Hopefully, you are keeping up with this, and hopefully you'll continue to do so as we continue in Holy Week, in our Holy Week daily devotionals. I want to read from Luke chapter 20, verses 1 through 8. Now, I want to remind you that yesterday we talked about how Jesus wept over the city, and then Jesus cleansed the temples, right? And so cleansed the temple, and all of that occurred in Luke 19, and you can read that and see what happened there. And so what happens here is that the authority of Jesus is now challenged. Now, there are different debates between scholars and theologians on whether or not Luke chapter 20 happened on Tuesday of Holy Week, but we do know that it happened right after the cleansing, because we do see in verse 20 it says, one day as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel. So it's very possible that this happened on Holy Week, but either way it happened before the crucifixion of Christ. So let's pick up in the second part of verse 1. The chief priests and all the scribes with the elders came up and said to him, "Tell us by what authority you do these things, or who it is that gave you this authority?" He answered them, "I also will ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from man?" And they discussed it with one another, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say, why did you not believe him? But if we say from man, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet." So they answered that they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." So now we continue to see this relationship between Jesus and the Pharisees escalate, right? And we see this all throughout all of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And so it's just very interesting that they still don't believe Christ. They're still asking these different questions. And then and of course from verses 9 through verse 26, you see the parable of the wicked tenants, and you can look at that on your own. You see the Sadducees are asking about the resurrection. And then of course this chapter wraps up with whose son is the Christ. I'll read verse 41. But he said to them, "How can they say that the Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool.' David thus calls him Lord, so how is he his son?" And so we're seeing all these different questions and all these different conversations occur between the Pharisees and the scribes. And we know during Holy Week that was happening. You say, "How do you know that, Pastor?" Well, we know on Thursday night of Holy Week, it all kind of escalated to a head, and the Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, the Jewish leaders enacted their plan to betray Jesus, which they baited Judas with money in to be a part of this. So all of this is happening, and of course we believe Tuesday is a continuation of these questionings and these different things happening during Holy Week. But don't be afraid, beloved, because we know Friday's coming, we know the crucifixion is coming, but we also know Sunday's coming, and there'll be an empty tomb. We hope you'll be with us tomorrow night as we have a special Holy Week service at 7 p.m. And also join us tomorrow morning as we have another Holy Week daily devotional video. This is Pastor Brady from First Baptist Church of Gaston, Holy Week Videos 2023.